So, hi guys, welcome along to the first Focus On panel session that we're having. The idea that each week we look at a particular different theme of business and just invite some experts to come along and just share their thoughts on what they think is going on. Oh, we've already had a comment. Yes, hi phone, we're starting now. So first of all, if we just go around, I'd like to thank first of all Russell, who's sort of stepped in last minute because our scheduled person is missing somewhere. I know not where. He may pop up later, we'll see. So yeah, just go around the room and you guys just want to introduce yourselves and let us know what you do in life. So let's start with Petra.
Oh dear. Hey everyone. What do? I help business owners to become extremely visible through LinkedIn so that they don't have to do all this yucky stuff of prospecting, cold calling, and all that stuff, but so that people start talking about them and clients actually seem to appear out of thin air, although there is a little bit of strategy behind it. So that is what I do.
Thank you, Petra. Kevin.
Yeah, I'm part of 13 Media Group, and I'm here today, as you can see, as your copywriter. Basically, we create media assets, specifically copy, blog articles, email shots, etc., anything that has writing, with the exception of social media, which we don't do. And we work then with messaging with businesses to get the right message out and to push the sales funnel. Essentially, what we do is create things that are little links in your sales funnel to get you down the line.
And last but not least, and last minute, Russell.
Thanks, Paul. Russell from QRB. We specialise in training solutions for both project management and service management. So part of our service management training is actually focusing on who we are serving. So hopefully we've got some good input there. Yep, stepped in last minute. I'm probably here to offer up the position of sales and marketing from an SME perspective of trying to do it myself.
There you go. Fair enough.
We'll see what my contribution could add, but hopefully something positive.
I'm sure it will be, Russ. I have every confidence, so no pressure. So that is the general question then. Are SMEs, are small businesses good at marketing? So Kev, why don't you give us your opinion?
Oh, okay. If I'm being honest, I think I've been thinking about it because I was expecting you to use this as the first question in there. You know, it was bound to be the first thing you asked, and I'm not sure. Unfortunately, Paul, I don't think the question is fair. I think the question is a little bit unfair. Why should they be? I mean, the question here is, I don't think it's whether they're good at marketing or not. The question is, should they? Why should they be any good at marketing? Most SMEs have a very fixed product that they're really good at. A very fixed thing that they can do. And I'm sure Petra will back me up on this. When you go out to the marketplace, a certain percentage of what you do on social, or probably 100% from my point of view in terms of content, is about that particular product or service. So why would an accountant have any knowledge of marketing? So I think the answer is probably, as a rule, unfortunately, no, not particularly good. But I don't want that to be a negative thing. I think it's a positive thing. I think it gives you a position of learning, and it gives you a position where, if you are aware that you have a lack of knowledge, you can then go find people to supplement that knowledge for you. And I think one of the things that people say, what is marketing 101? What's the first rule of marketing? And I think the first rule of marketing is know where you can't do it and get somebody who can.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Petra.
Yeah, Paul, you just see the comment from Jackie. Says, "Is this happening? I don't seem to be able to get in." But it is in a comment. So, Jackie, are you in? Can you see us? Can you hear us? Let us know in the comments. As far as small, medium-sized businesses and marketing, so it depends obviously how small the business is, but a lot of businesses like my own is a one-person business, which means you started this business because there's something you're really good at and that you love doing, and suddenly you also have to do, the accounting, the cleaning, the administration, and yes, marketing. So that's not a given. It's a bit like sports people, they all need media training because suddenly they'll be interviewed about all sorts of things. I do think some people have a real knack for it, others don't, that we can't generalize and say, small business is good at marketing. I do believe that a lot of people who are scared of it maybe overthinking it. I think marketing can be a lot easier than you think. I mean, speaking for myself, where I use LinkedIn as my main channel, it's pretty much if you absolutely love what you do in your business, and if you could really talk about it to your friends, then you can do so online. And that is marketing. It doesn't always have to be extremely, slick and campaign and all that. So I think that's my contribution that I want to bring today, to take away that, yes, if you have the funds, it's good to outsource and get other experts in. But if you don't, it doesn't have to be that scary and daunting once you find your own way of doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a few problems. It's not streaming to LinkedIn, apparently. That's why people are putting comments in. So I'm just trying to fix that in the background as we're live. No pressure.
Yeah.
As a small business owner, then, Russell, what's your viewpoint on it?
Well, I think very similar to Petra's in a way, because when I first started, I'm kind of really good at training, and I'm really good at presenting frameworks in an understandable way. And yeah, let's start a business to do that. And then all of a sudden, I become an accountant and a marketeer and a sales director and an administration person, which I hate, by the way. It's that kind of thing that I've got my own management structure in my organization, but my name is in all of the boxes. And marketing is just one of those areas where I've never done it before. I know the theory behind it, and it's then just trying to find your own way. And it's after a while you do spot the gaps, and as Kevin said, recognize what you're not good at and get somebody that is good at it, to kind of help.
I think just pick up on something Petra said there, if I can, Paul, just for a second there. You made a really very good point there, Petra, when you said, talk about your business and talk about what you do, because everybody's enthusiastic about what they do, or hopefully they are, and I think for a lot of small businesses, particularly, I don't really like the term, but the micro business, the 1 and 2 people, I think it's really an unfair term, that, but it's about talking about your business with a purpose. Rather, you know what I mean? Everybody can talk about their business, and I think a lot of the times marketing is about saying, well, I know how to talk about my business. Russell knows how to talk about what he does. He knows how to talk about his training marketplace. He knows his world. He knows it inside out. All he needs to do really is talk about that with a purpose in the right place, and I've got this thing that we talk about, this end game, where we say where everything should be contributing to your sales funnel, and in one way, and if it isn't, stop doing it, and I think Petra, you're entirely right where you said for most, and Russell, you said as well, the basics of it. I think the difficulty sometimes for small businesses is that they know the basics but don't actually know how to apply them, rather than not understand them. And it's that hesitance, isn't it? That fear. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I do the wrong thing? What if I'm posting the wrong stuff or whatever? And sometimes I think just part of the hand-holding part of our job, Petra, is convincing people to just take it, get the risk and do it. Just go for it, isn't it? Sometimes, especially with things like video.
Can I just drop in with just a small thought while I've got it before it runs out of my head? But actually talking to your potential customers is quite an important thing to get right as well, in terms of language. And also what I know what I do, and I know what my organization is about. I don't necessarily see what other people see about my organization and how to talk to them. And I've done this fairly recently with a marketing professional. It's kind of like talk about what I do, and some of the content that they are coming up with, I look at it and I go, wow, that's really great, but I would never have thought of saying that, because I think everybody automatically understands that about my business. Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that's what it kind of brings to me, certainly from the outside.
And that's a really, really good point, Russell. And so one of the things I do when I work with clients, I usually send a little questionnaire up front, sort of like, oh, you know, why do you want to use LinkedIn? What's your big issue? This, that, and the rest of it. But the key thing is, one of my last questions is, you know, for example, I ask them, what make you think I am the right person to work with you? So I ask them what their biggest problem is, what they want fixed, but also what make you think I'm the right person to work with you? And then the things they say about me, I'm thinking, so that is how people see me and my business. And then, you know, and that is how the people see it who have already decided to work with me. So those are the ones where I make the good impression. So that is stuff that I really then start to use more in my, you know, my content, my copy on my website, but also my posts, things like that. So it's always a bit tricky because on the one hand, a lot of people will tell you in marketing to use the words that your customers use, right? Use the words that they use. I agree with that to a point, because the other thing is, what I'm really well known for on LinkedIn is that I totally show up as I am, which not everybody likes. And that creates a brilliant filter for some people who are not a good fit to work with me. They won't even contact me in the first place. And other people are so drawn to it that they may not have even realized they wanted to do something about LinkedIn. But once they hear me talk about it, read my stuff, they think, oh, yeah. So it is good to figure out a bit how other people talk about you, but you got to make sure it still really, really feels like you. Is what I think.
But that's part of the filtering process, isn't it? And I'm really pleased you said that, because one of the things that I think people are really scared about initially, especially because I was, you know, when I first started in business, I think everybody is, that you go, well, what if people don't like me?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It makes absolutely no difference if they do or they don't. You're not interested. If they don't like you, you might as well find out right at the very beginning, instead of spending 10 hours building a relationship that's never going to work with a customer. And in marketing in particular, you know, Russell, you kind of hit on this as well. The relationship between you and the person that you are working with is such an important part of what you do. And if you don't like them or they don't like you, stop. Don't even try it. You know, because it's not going to work. But the customer's voice is absolutely key to what you do, and what you're really looking to do, I think, is what you're saying there, Petra, is to get your voice to match the customer's voice in one single, you know, kind of global unit, isn't it? That says, I'm talking the way that I talk, how my customers want to hear it, is what you're doing, isn't it? Really, it's how your customers want to hear you and your business, and that's the real thing that works. Just being yourself, it's not going to do it. It's not going to sell anything. Doing exactly what the customer expects just makes you sound sycophantic and you know, fake. But if you can get those two balanced right, and one of the things I do with customers is I ask them if your clients saw your business as a person, who would they see it as? Which is wonderfully pretentious and makes me sound all clever and arty. But what I'm really asking.
You must have read that somewhere, Kevin.
I did, yes, I did. Yeah, of course. In the manual that I wrote. But no, it is, and I ask it, and like you, Petra, ask it right at the end, because if you know, wearing a little bit of a smug hat here, 9 times out of 10, I've either got an equivalent person or the right person in mind when they tell me. I did it this week, asked somebody this week, and the person they came back with was exactly who I had in mind as the voice of their company. And if you can get that right, you're talking about you're doing the right thing, aren't you? You've from that point on, you've got to have the voice right, haven't you?
Yeah. So going back to what was said earlier, you know, in terms of I'm probably not asking the right question here. You know, because you said, Kev, you know, why should SMEs be good at marketing? And I see where you're coming from, because, you know, unless you had any formal training in marketing, then how would you know? But, you know, when you set up as a small business, isn't it common sense that you're going to have to market your business?
You would have thought, yeah. But yes, but common sense is about having the framework in which to have the common sense in the first place as well, Paul. You know, let me tell you a little story. My background, my training is as a screenwriter, and I was talking to a guy years ago at a barbecue, very nice afternoon. I was talking away, and the guy said, "What did I do?" And I said, "Oh, well, I've just finished my master's degree in screenwriting, television screenwriting." And he said, "What's that?" Right? And I thought, how can anybody not know what a scriptwriter is? And I said, well, and I said to him, how can you not know? And he looked at me and made one of the things you remember for the rest of your life. He said, I'm an engineer. Why would I have ever thought about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also sometimes we know our own stuff so well, we take things for granted. I'll never forget when I first was doing teaching computer classes, and this is going to date me a little bit, because when I asked people to grab their mouse and click and drag, half the people in the class had never seen a mouse in their whole life, you know. So things like that. And I think, but also, I think marketing, the reason why I believe that we shouldn't feel as scared of it as it sounds is that I think every business owner is marketing without knowing it. You know, every time you talk about what you do, that's marketing. When you talk about it with real enthusiasm, you know, when someone asks you a question and it really hits the spot in what you like most about your business, you can see it. When the person answers, their eyes light up, they sit up straight, they become more animated. If you're the person doing that when I ask you something, then you are marketing. So when you're at network meetings and, you know, you get 45 seconds to introduce yourself, if that energy is also there, that you really love what you're doing, that is also marketing. So I think part of it is how we can also help other business owners is to translate these things that they naturally do that are actually marketing but they're not aware of, and how to do that on the platforms that we use. So in Kevin's case, you know, how to translate that to website copy or other content. In my case, how to translate that to behavior on LinkedIn, because to me, being on LinkedIn is the same as meeting someone in person. You know, that's just what you do. So
well, the description of marketing, isn't it, it's the bridge between what producers produce and consumers need. You know, we build bridges. We just build bridges. We just get the right people to talk to the right people. And it's funny, you know, on a rare serious note for me, I think we have a moral obligation to help people do that. You know, if you are in a and this came up at one of the business community meetings a couple of weeks ago. You know, we're in a room full of people there, all of whom are experts at what they do, and most of whom I knew, and most of whom I trust implicitly in their job roles. If we don't get our marketing right, if we don't help as marketing people and as content people and as LinkedIn experts and all that sort of stuff, somebody like Russell, who's an expert in his area, if we don't give him what he needs to reach out to those people and provide the right service, I think morally we're a little bit, you know, letting people down, aren't we? Isn't that what we're here for? You know, to stop people going to the wrong people as well as much as we're in the game of making connections.
Yeah, I think you're right. The other thing that sort of springs to mind is that, you know, in my experience, a lot of small businesses will do their own marketing, whether they know what they're doing or not. And why do you think that is? Why wouldn't they outsource it to experts like you?
a lot of time when you start out in business, you don't have the money to outsource. And I don't know, it's easy for us to say, look, but if you invest first, I can get you in 3 months, where me, when I didn't invest, you know, it took 3 years to go. But sometimes the money just isn't there, you know. So I find some trainers, coaches, other business people, you know, people like myself, a little bit condescending sometimes. Like, well, if you're not going to invest, you're never going to get somewhere. yeah, well, what if you can't invest? So I think money is one of the biggest reasons, I think, why small businesses don't invest in other expertise. But sometimes it's also that well, you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
So then you also don't know that you could outsource it and how that would help you.
Mhm.
I mean, when I first kicked off QRB, yes, the money was a big side of it because there wasn't a lot to invest in the company. So yeah, I didn't go outside for marketing because, in my best Jeremy Clarkson voice, how hard can it be? And I think a lot of my early work as well was very much reliant on people I already knew from being a trainer as a permanent employee. So a lot of my early clients who are still with me are people from there where I just called them and said, hey, I'm doing this as a business on my own now. Do you fancy some training? And away we go. And even people that I worked with were referring people to me. So a lot of that early work came from referrals. So there was no great need to do a lot of marketing. Yeah. That need has shifted recently. So yes, I look to outsource now because now I really know how hard it really is, having tried it. Yeah.
There's two camps there, isn't there? There's the can't afford it. I'm going to have to do it myself, which we've all been through that kind of thing, whether that's your accounts or whatever, and you go, I'll give it a go. And then you realise I shouldn't have given it a go and give it to somebody else when you've got the money. And there's the, the how hard can it be? I'll give it a go. And if you want, if the people are going to go that route, they're going to say, well, I'll try it myself, and more power to them. I mean, do it. Why would you spend money in your business? You don't have to spend if you can do it. It's about allocating time, but I think people quite often don't realise the time resource, the learning curve they're going to have to go through. But if you are prepared to do that, if you are prepared to risk that, go and find the free stuff. We give it away. I've got a YouTube channel where I just give it away all the time. Everything I do, I don't hide anything I do. I'd rather people could do it because I'm aware, and I think Petra's probably the same. That and Russell, if people could do the training in house, they'll do it in house. Why should they pay you? But we might as well at that stage, I think, say, okay, well, how can I help them do that? Because what eventually happens is they reach a stage where they go, I can do this, but it's not worth it to me anymore. My time is better spent, servicing clients, doing whatever. So then I think a lot of people turn to marketing as they grow to outsource a kind of middle section until they reach a stage where they can bring it back in again, So I think there's a kind of, on the financial side, there's a can't afford it, don't have the time to do it myself, and then there's a now I can afford to bring somebody in to do it stage, as people get higher up. But it is, go look on the internet if you want to do it yourself. Go look around. People they will help give you so much free stuff.
But it's interesting what you say, Kevin, because I agree with you. We know that yes, we're both sort of on the philosophy that it's okay to give as much as your knowledge away for free as you can, but there is two sides to that as well, isn't it? On the one hand, I mean, I speak for myself, but I get the feeling that, for what I know you're the same, Kev, that it's just good fun and nice to be able to help and to put a lot of stuff out there for free. By the same token, if anyone's still watching us, that is also marketing because you're showcasing your work, but you're also showcasing the kind of person you are, that you're not scared to give it away. And ultimately, in my early days of my business, and someone asked me about LinkedIn, and I was still reading lots of books, right? Try and get up to speed. So if someone asked me, I'd say, oh yeah, I just read it in that book. And then someone said to me, oh, but you shouldn't tell them which books you read because then they won't hire you. But I was like, someone who believes they can learn from reading a book, so I was doing myself, will never hire me anyway. So I don't lose a client there. But then if they read that book and implement it, and their friend says, oh, wow, you're really, all over LinkedIn these days. How do you do that? And they go, oh, I read that book. And their friend says, oh, I can't be bothered reading a book. I just want someone to, talk me through it. They will refer back to you because you were the one that wasn't trying to sell them, but it was just helping. So I think helping is really good in two ways. It does ultimately, karma and all that come back to you, but it's also so much fun. And I think a lot of business owners, especially early on, are still scared to give away too much for free. But here locally, there was a bicycle repair shop, and they have YouTubes on the website, how to fix a puncture, how to do this, how to do that. Because first of all, they don't want to do that tedious shit. Anyone who can do it themselves, fine. But secondly, because they're saving you money, by the time you're ready to buy a brand spanking new bike, where do you go?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We should form a company, Petra. That could be between the two of us. That could be our slogan. Kevin and Petra, we do your tedious shit for you.
Oh, yeah.
That'd work.
So I could do that. Hey, just real quick, sorry, but I'm wondering, Paul, sorry if I sort of take over, but if we're live on Facebook and not on LinkedIn, if anyone happens to be watching us and actually see this, feel free to chuck questions in the comments, because we can talk amongst ourselves forever. We're really good at that. But if anyone did have questions for us, we're quite happy to answer them as well.
I've got a question.
Are you allowed to ask questions? I thought I'm hosting this, aren't I? How's this work?
Well,
I just took over.
A new section called. It's a new section that we've just made up.
Okay. What's your question?
What's your answer to this question, Paul? You deal with a lot of small businesses. You've got a network of however many in BuzzCon, how many thousands of members BuzzCon's got. You deal with small businesses all the time. Let's put this awkward question back to you. Are SMEs good at marketing?
Well, what I was going to say before you rudely interrupted me was I appreciate.
Let me interrupt you again.
I appreciate that investment is a barrier when businesses first start off, but I think also they don't, referring back to what Russell said in terms of when he started off, he got his immediate network that sort of gave him a supply of work. And then, they gave him referrals, and eventually that dries out. I think that's where most people, how they do start off. But I think when you get to the crux of it, businesses don't actually know what their message is, and they don't know how to position themselves properly. So when I start working with people, it's going back to those foundations really, and just trying to distinguish, what is their offering, what is their target market, where should they be promoting their business, because there's loads of different marketing channels out there. Which ones do you choose, which ones are going to work for you? But I think it really does start with who your ideal target market is, because I think once you've defined that, it makes it much more easier to then focus your marketing activity to go and access wherever your target market is hanging out, for want of a better expression. Just that. So I'm not sure whether that does answer your question, or whether it puts it in perspective as to where I come from. And then the other failure of, again, small businesses, if they are marketing and they are using marketing channels, is they don't measure the effectiveness of the different marketing channels. So it's they don't really know where they're getting most bang for their buck, and that can be detrimental to them, because they're spending money but they don't know whether they're getting a return. They might see leads coming through, but they're not asking where those leads are coming from. I think that they're some of the issues once you've overcome the hurdle of building, and they will come.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even monitoring. I appreciate that monitoring sometimes is hard. Petra, particularly for you, you don't know how often or how long it's going to take for somebody saw on LinkedIn somewhere to echo back through the system and result in a contact 6 months later. Sometimes, it's never. There's a great statistics about blog writing that is from, I think it's HubSpot in their state of marketing report. So 57% of businesses will report that they have gained business through a blog on their website. Right, which is a lot, isn't it? 57% result is pretty good for any marketing function whatsoever. And I thought that's clearly wrong, because no way on earth is that accurate. That's probably nearer 89 to 90%, because that means 57% of people who took the measurement and the customer remembered they'd seen a blog that brought them to them said that the blog helped. But you extrapolate out of that, and Petra, I'm so glad I'm not in your job for this, trying to explain this to clients. It must be a nightmare for you that all that work on LinkedIn you do see the results, and yes, you can monitor the results the best you can, but you've also got to monitor the extrapolation, the guesswork that goes with it a little bit, because that blog, that post, that little bit of marketing that Russell did when he spoke to somebody, and it is marketing. Petra's right, it is marketing. Russell's at a network group and he says, "Oh, I do training, blah blah blah," and 6 months later they get somebody who remembers it and they pass it on and they give it to them. Who leaves a month, then they contact Russell and Russell goes, "Where did you hear about me?" And they go, "Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, hey, because
Just ask a question. So, what are your tips and hacks to measure the marketing?
yeah. So one of the things is, again, when someone starts working with me, I always ask, how did you find out about me? And as Kev's saying, sometimes it's so long ago they don't know anymore, but a lot of the times they do. And it's really important to ask that because, for example, I don't know if anyone was into it when Clubhouse was sort of really big for a little while when we were all bored at home with that bloody pandemic. So I added it to my little drop-down menu in the website, like, how did you find out about me? LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, this, that, and the rest of it. I added Clubhouse to it. And I was running an online program where people can sign up, just book through my website without talking to me first. And lo and behold, someone ticked Clubhouse. Now, I would have never thought, because it wasn't even a session that I hosted. It wasn't where I was on the panel. It was a session where at some stage I just raised my hand and said something as well. And that sparked enough curiosity for that person to click through to my Clubhouse profile, to my website, and book just like that. So one way to really see, ultimately, if your marketing is working, is literally ask people, where did you find me? But other things is, depending what you're using, there are always, just to try and still address Fern, who's in the US and got out of bed for us, there's so many metrics. Like when you have a blog, then there's Google Analytics, obviously, with your website, but also in LinkedIn, often it's not so much the numbers, but the insights you can gain from the numbers. So when you see that you have this many profile views, they're up or down, doesn't matter. What matters is if you did a post and you suddenly, in my case, if I suddenly got lots of profile views by kindergarten teachers, one of the groups least active on LinkedIn, then I've done something wrong, because that's not the people that I want to target that are going to hire me. So I'm never too fussed about the actual numbers of profile views or post views or whatnot, but I always click through to see what's behind those numbers and what that is telling me. So that's one way that I try to measure if my efforts actually get me anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said there, what are the tips for my tip is pretty much what Petra said there. Understand the numbers, understand what you're measuring before you try and measure, because there's all sorts of things that, vanity numbers is a great one. People go, yeah, I've got 100,000 followers on Twitter, and how many of those are active? 7. That's not a good number. It's just a high number. There's a big difference between those two things, and you can sit and measure that all you want, but it's never going to be more than 7 if you just. And in fact, this has become so important. This idea that the numbers mean something, and that you're getting something back from the metric itself. That we're seeing a shift away from the major influencers into micro influencers, because they know their numbers matter. The metric they're measuring, the metric of how much response is there for a specific audience, is much higher than it is for an influencer with millions. You're better measuring the metrics that appeal to your audience, your thing. So I guess in terms of websites and in terms of web copy there, because that's the one I know best, if you post a blog, if you go look at the metrics a month later and go, oh, it's only been read by 2 people, that's not enough, you've made a pointless measurement. If you go back 8 months later and it's been read by 2,000 people, you've got a metric that matters. So you need to understand that the first metric means nothing after a month, but after 6 months it does. And then use those metrics to feed your copy. So what you're looking at is, if that's an evergreen piece of copy I put up, if it's something that I can update in 6 months' time, I'll get those people to reread it, because they'll you can send out the, hey, we've just updated this copy. So understand what the metric means would be my tip, and
Yes.
link that directly to what you want out of your marketing. don't spend your time on stuff that doesn't matter. There's all sorts of metrics you can chase down. I mean, absolutely nothing and won't do you any good. And don't fool yourself. This is another one that people do. They'll discard any metric they don't like in favor of the ones that make them feel good.
Yeah.
Can I just add a little caveat to all this measurement stuff? Is that also with measurements, and I think you're right, Kevin. Pick the right one that you can then get information from, but try not to turn a measurement into like a target.
Yeah.
So don't try and get 2,000 people to read a blog as a target.
Yeah.
Use it as a measurement to get you some other information. But also as a bit of a newbie to all of this kind of stuff. And I am an IT guy, I'm an IT geek, so I understand about data and information and knowledge and stuff. But when you look at Google Analytics, it's kind of like, what the heck is that showing me? Yeah. And yeah, I can see the data, but where do you go from there? And that's where I need help from people to kind of like interpret what that is. One of the things that I have done, and going back to Fran's question about tips, just recently been setting up landing pages specifically for marketing campaigns, so that whenever you put something out there, you point it at a specific page on the website, so you can measure it directly rather than just have people land on any general page that you've got where it all gets lost in with all the other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, back to Fern's question, I think, there are ways of tracking stuff, certainly on social media, all the different insights and things you get, Google Analytics. I think there's a danger of sort of a paralysis by analysis, isn't there? Because there's sometimes so much data that you're just overwhelmed by it. But I think also, if you're doing direct mails or flyers or stuff like that, then you can have specific email addresses that are only unique to that campaign, or landing pages, as Russell said, or telephone numbers. It's quite easy and relatively cheap now to get telephone numbers that will divert to your main line, but that particular number is relevant to that particular campaign. And I think you've just got to be rationalize the number of measurements that you're making, so you don't spend sort of a week of your life analyzing the data for no apparent reason. I'm confident has asked another question, but I'm going to leave that for you guys to answer on the platform she's asked it on, because I'm conscious of time and not going on for too long. As Pep said earlier, we could talk here all day probably, but I want to try and limit these to sort of 40 minutes or so. So if you were to give sort of one parting marketing tip then to any small business out there, what would your top tip be? Petra.
Okay.
I guess my top tip is, don't think you have to be this or have to be that. Especially for me, talking LinkedIn, a lot of people think it's really formal or so business-like. And to me, yes, it is a business platform. So my top tip is, think, how do you act in your business? What kind of clothes do you wear when you meet with a client? That's how you show up in your profile picture, or if you share pictures of yourself with your post. How do you speak? What kind of words do you use? Kevin and I talked in this panel about tedious shit. Well, if you think that using the word shit is going to lose your clients and you're worried about that, then you don't. But if you know this is how you naturally speak, then don't censor yourself, because the more, I know, buzzword authentic, but the more real you are, the more likely you are to attract those clients that you will absolutely love working with. So that would be my biggest tip. Don't overthink it. Act the way you would when you're working with a client.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
I think mine actually answers Fern's last question, to be honest, when she said about target audience. She just put, I don't think everybody can see it, but a key question to attract target audience and parameters. My answer to that would be the key question will present itself to you if you know who that target audience is. Know your avatars. Don't go for anybody who isn't going to buy from you. Don't worry about it. The stuff that Petra's talking about, we'll cover all that for you anyway. Just build that in and you'll be nice and everybody will like you. But when it comes to that question for your target audience, if you know who they are, you know where their pain points are, and this is marketing 101. If you're selling paracetamol, find somebody who's got a headache, So find out where your customers' pain points are and ask that question. do you have a problem with this, and being direct and simple as you can. And the parameters around that question are, well, you know, what do they need? What do they want? And then talk as them, put enough of yourself into that it filters, like Petra's talking about, and it will work. I mean, it's not, it really isn't rocket science, this stuff. And the basic stuff, learn the basic stuff, and it will work for you. Get your business off the ground to a stage where you can then go to a specialist like Petra and say, hey, make my LinkedIn work 100 times better. But yeah. So there you go. That's my basic tip would be: know your avatars, do an avatar sheet, learn your audience, find who your ideal customer is, talk to them, and that question will present itself.
Thank God he used paracetamol as an example and not Viagra. Russell, do you have any one top tip?
How can I follow that? I don't think I've got much more to add to what Petra and Kevin have just said, actually, because that was what was running through my mind as I was trying to think, yeah, what would I do? To me, it is, yeah, identify your customer, speak in their language that they're going to understand, but just think about what value you can bring to them. Yeah, what kind of, as Kevin says, what kind of pain points can you help them with? What kind of risks can you take away from them? Yeah, they're going to come to you to take your service, to take some risks out of their world for you to manage for them. Yeah, think about that kind of area, and the cost savings as well, because you know they're never going to take a service from somebody that's going to be more expensive than if they do it themselves. You know, the financial aspect of it, but just think in those kind of areas, and that's where I would question a potential customer as to how I can help do that and what kind of value I can deliver to them.
Do you know what Russell said that more succinctly than me and Petra did there? I think that's exactly spot on. Exactly spot on. You know.
Yeah.
Even though he's a stunt double today, he gets the best prize for top marketer on the call today.
What would marketers? We can't give you a straight answer. We'd be drummed out.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for joining us. This was the first one of hopefully many to come. So thanks for being the guinea pigs on that, and particularly Russell for not knowing he was going to be appearing on a live stream. But hey, thanks for agreeing to do that. And yeah, next time it's every week at 11 a.m. on Tuesday. Hopefully, we'll sort out the LinkedIn glitch. I don't know what was going on there. It's the first time it's ever happened where it's not broadcast to a platform. So thanks, LinkedIn, for that. And next week, we're going to have a theme around operations and resources. So we're not sure exactly what we're going to be looking at, but, you know, tune into that, because we're going to be looking at all pillars of business. Because it's, you know, it's not just marketing and sales that makes your businesses successful. It's being conscious of all the different aspects of your business. So we're going to be cycling through those in the weeks to come. So thank you very much, guys. I'll end the broadcast there.
Thank you.